everybody, I'm Sean Hammond. We're at Line 6 in Calabasas, California. We've got Andy Paredes here showing us the new DT50 amp head designed with Reinhold Bogner, right?
That's correct, yeah. The DT50 is our new all-tube amplifier that we designed with Reinhold. And basically what we did was we created a two-channel amp, but instead of the traditional two-channel amp where you have a clean sound and a distortion sound, we have 4 different amp topologies that you can choose, and either channel can be used in whichever topology you choose.
Why don't we step over to the head and you show us what we're talking about?
So basically what's going to happen here, I'm going to start in channel A, which is the left side, because we don't really have clean and dirty here. So I'm going to go over to channel A, and basically you're going to see the traditional amp knobs and controls like you'll always see, so I'll just give you a sound so you can hear what's going on. But there's a lot more going on here than just a traditional, drive through volume. Because if you take a look over here, you're going to see these 4 different topologies. And what these topologies are doing is they're changing a number of different things within the power amp section. And the way Reinhold Bogner designed this is when you select one of these switches, it's actually going to not just change like the output mode, but it's also going to change the biasing. It's going to change how the feedback works. So you're going to get, for example, like a real traditional American clean type of sound like that. But if I switch it over to number 2, this is going to be more of like a mid-gain, very British, like maybe reminiscent of like a Marshall or a Park or a High Watt. So all of a sudden now, you have a completely different sound than what we hear. So here's the first one. And just by hitting that switch and going to the different topology, we have basically like a new amp almost. And it's important to understand when you look at this, that this is not modeled. This is all actual relays that are switching in the hardware. And in fact, in a second, I'll show you a couple other things we can do, but you'll actually hear the relays click as you switch between different things. And then the third topology is the zero negative feedback, which is basically like what you would see on like the real chimey types of amps, like something like Vox or something like that. So here's what this sound, I didn't change anything on the EQ over here, but here's what this is going to sound like. So all of a sudden it's getting more broken up as we go through these. So again, just so you can hear, there's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. And then the 4th mode that you're going to see is the high gain, which is going to be reminiscent of like a Mesa or an Engel or a Bogner, for example. So by switching over there, now you're getting an even more broken up sound. And below that switch, you're going to notice that you're going to see the pentode and triode, which is basically changing the power tube output configuration. So right now it's in triode, which is a lower power. But now if I hit this, it's all of a sudden you're going to get that volume boost. And then over here on this switch, which is to the right of the master volume, it's actually a class A switch or a class AB switch. So currently I've been running in class A, so just so you can hear what it sounds like. And now if I switch it over to class AB, you get a little bit of different character, just like why in the old days some people played a Vox, some people played a Marshall. It's because you had those differences. So now it's actually showing, you can hear those differences on one amplifier. Right now I'm on channel A, and I'm going to go back to my clean sound, so I'm going back to topology 1. I'll go to pentode, and I'm going to be in class A. Okay, so we have that tone. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over to class B, and you notice how everything just switched. So here's in A, I've got 1 pentode and class A. If I go over to channel B, now it's going to number 4, class AB and pentode. So really what you can do here is you can treat it like a traditional 2-channel amp. Everything is, what you see is what you get, or WYSIWYG. So you just move your knobs where you want them, make a couple little adjustments when the band starts, and then you can just play for the rest of the night and treat it like a 2-channel amp, and no one's ever the wiser. But what's really cool about this is you can actually make 2 clean channels. So for example, tomorrow when you're playing in a different gig, and instead of the traditional clean, dirty sound, let's say you want the clean and kind of crunchy sound, well, you're not limited like you would have been on previous amps. So for example, now let's say A, got this, but now on B, I want kind of a box type of vibe, so I can do that. And now when I switch back and forth,
so it remembers the last thing that you put into it.
Absolutely. But now let's say you're playing in like the super heavy band and you just want super crunch and super shred. Well, you can do that. So if you go to A, and let's say we select this for pentode and class AB. So that's our tone here. Now we can switch over to channel B and we can make almost the same tone, just, let's say a little more treble. We switch back and forth. So you're not limited at all. And that's one of the really neat features about this amp.
Got it flipped around here so we can see the tubes inside there. I'm sure people are very curious about what kind of power tubes are driving all these different modes. Give us a rundown on the back panel.
Okay, well, to start with, you're looking in the back, you're going to see a pair of 12AX7s toward the front, and you're going to see the pair of EL34s in the back here. Reinhold decided that we looked at a number of different tubes, like 6L6s and KT88s, and for whatever reason, Reinhold decided that EL34 sounded the best for this design. So that's what we went with. And when we go through all of the topology switching, that is all analog relays. It's not modeled. We have our MIDI jacks here, where we have the inputs and outputs. We also have our effect loop here. And what's cool on this is Reinhold made sure that we had actually a level control. So you've got that center kind of indent, but you can add or take away from it if you're getting too much signal. We actually have a cabinet simulated out. So if you want to run direct to front of house, if you're running short on mics, or if you want to do silent recording late at night, you don't have to wake up your friends and neighbors. Here we have the different output for the ohm loads, depending on which cabinet type you're going to. And then for the other thing that we have for the switching, we can just use a regular 2-channel foot switch. Any standard on-off will work just fine. And then we also have this new proprietary thing called Line 6 Link, and this is an standard XLR connection, and what that's going to do is we can connect to one of the Pod HD series, and the pod can actually control the amp and change all of that relay switching that we were talking about before with the topology and different things as far as how the amp works. But we can also add the Pod HD models onto the 4 models that are on here already. You can have A and B still set up, but then you also have your 32 other banks of 4 that you can run into this as well. Because one thing that we had run into a lot is we had a lot of customers asking how they can integrate their pod into their Line 6 amp. So we had heard that enough where we actually looked into the idea of actually making them interconnectable, and that's what Line 6 is doing, is so you don't have to go into in and out of your pod into the front of an amp. Or in the past, like a lot of times people would run their pod into the effects loop return, for example. So they were sometimes having to lose some capabilities of their amp. Whereas with this situation, it's all digital control of your analog amp, but you're adding all your amp models that you get in Pod HD. So it's really exciting.
So if you're using the Pod HD, you just plug into the Pod HD and then take the XLR out of the Line 6 link into the back here, and that's it.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you're running a Pod HD 500, you can actually run multiple controls. So for example, if you want a wet-dry combination, you can do that. Or if you want like center dry and then left and right stereo. So if we take a look right here on the back, you're going to see your Line 6 link input, and then you're also going to see your Line 6 link through. So for some things that we've done in demonstrations, we'll actually run 2 or 3 of them simultaneously. It's pretty amazing sounding.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much for showing us this. I know that a lot of people are going to be excited about this, as they usually are, about your new stuff. Where can people go to find out more about it, though?
The best place to go would be line6.com.
All right. Thanks so much, Andy. I'm Sean Hammond, and you're watching PremierGuitar.com.